Hello. Welcome to Reinvent Your Impact, where I share advice and actionable skills every day to help you become a better, more confident woman in leadership. I'm Dr. Geneva, and I'm a leadership expert. I love talking about the ways that we can turn our influence into impact, even greater ways to do good things. And I believe with the right skills, right mindset, any woman can positively influence anyone, their teams, the communities, and the causes they care about. I often say you don't need a fancy title to lead change. Whether you run a company, you're a business owner, you coach your kids' baseball league, you organize volunteers, you lead in your church or your family, you, in fact, can grow and share your gifts. And so, my goal is to give you the tools that can turn that influence into greater impact so that you can make those great choices and you can encourage others' talents and create the kind of needed progress on issues, big and small, from where you stand. When women lead confidently from their strengths, families, communities, organizations thrive. So, today's lesson is about shifting our thoughts and reactions to what typically are unexpected, but certainly they come to us, those life changes, and they kind of throw you off track. But I want to think about how we can better react to those changes as a leader and really see those transitions and life changes as chances to grow rather than blocking our path. And so today's quote I'd like you to think about is from Peg Strap. And she tells us that every transition begins with an ending. Find the courage to walk through the darkness to the other side. Now, the first thing I want to say is that not every transition is a bad thing. In fact, we have those great transitions like maybe a new baby in the family. I just recently, my youngest daughter, I was getting ready to say, not me, but my youngest daughter just had twins. That was a big transition, not only for her, but for us, for the whole family. So many transitions, because it's about life, are really exciting and wonderful. But the point is that most likely those transitions come with a whole set of emotions, and many of them are unexpected, etc. So what we're trying to really think about is when you have that kind of change in your life, how do you react to it so that you can do that in a positive way, so that as a leader you can see those changes and deal with them as growth opportunities rather than things that are going to, block you in whatever it is you're trying to do. So, when we think about these words that Peg Strep leaves us with, it also, this transitions begins with an ending, really has us think about how it's important to let go of past seasons as well and find the courage to accept and integrate those new things that are waiting for us. So let's think about that a little bit more. Um, so when we talk about transitions, we could be talking about your last child leaving the nest as they grow more independent. And this is that empty nest transition change for you. Now, I loved when my children they were very independent. Had my husband and I had done the best that we could. We knew they were off. And the good thing about it now, they're out of my pocketbook. So they're really independent, but it was a change. I mean, I went from being totally focused, and you know what I'm talking about when your children leave. You're totally focused on their upbringing, doing the best you can, planning schedules, planning your days around the activities focused on them. Well, when they leave, what you gonna do? Okay. Another transition might be the loss of a parent or a loved one. And particularly one who gave you, really, really personal support. Or another example might be you leaving a corporate job you no longer realize matches up with your values. All of these things are transitions, like overcoming a major health challenge. So what Peg Strep is suggesting to us is that each one of these transitions does have an ending. Now, there are two ways, of course, of looking at it. That is one, that that transition will end, so that, if you the empty nest syndrome comes, that's a change. It's an empty household. But then as time goes on, that situation changes. And so that's one way of looking at it. The other is that as these transitions happen, that in fact they're going to be natural and that this too shall pass. Okay. So I'd like you to think about how you can reinvent your impact by shifting your thinking about these transitions, recognizing that no matter how difficult they are, there is an end in sight. And how do you courageously walk through them? So, 3 points I'd like to make. First, I think it's important to really pinpoint where these pivot points of transition are. So, when did your roles transform through things like becoming an empty nester? So, in other words, when you're going through these transitions, or even now reflecting back, what happened when you face that situation, for example, of being an empty nester and your children left the home? What things changed? What were you, and then what did you go to become? And it's important to think about those points in transition, because it really does help you reflect on what your emotions were at the time, so that you can step out of yourself and really see what's going on, and really immerse yourself in the fact that this transition is happening and it's about change and what's going on and what's my role looking like. So that's one thing. The second thing I'd like to suggest to you about Peg Strep's transition has endings and finding the courage is that there are gifts in the change. And so I'd like you to think about finding the gifts in the change, meaning that as you're going through it, let's say you're going through a major health challenge. And while you're in it, in the thick of it, so many things are happening to you. Your body's changing. You're not doing things that you used to do. There's the fear, there's the anxiety. All of those things are happening. How are you dealing with it? What are the lessons you're learning? What are the gifts about yourself are you discovering? Have you noticed that you really are very, very strong? Have you noticed that you dug real deep to find courage? What about the gift of faith? Did you rediscover your faith or reconfirm that you are, in fact, a faithful person? Through transitions, we can find gifts, those things, those lessons about who we are and who we can, in fact, become. The third point I'd like to make about what Peg shared with us is that um, think about what outdated, let me call them outdated assumptions you might make about yourself as you're going through these transitions. This gives you an opportunity to really think about what you used to think about yourself or a situation. So, what do I mean? So, let's take the empty nester um, situation. Your children have left. You may have felt that your whole life was not only focused on your children, but that your children gave your life purpose. Now, children are a blessing and they do give us purpose. But is our entire life about raising children? Do we have some other things that we want to do, that we want to try, that we want to believe in that give us purpose? So that sometimes the transitions we go through can cause us to think about and reassess some assumptions that we used to have that perhaps now no longer work. So that if you were an empty nester and you were being very purposeful in the things that you were doing with and for your children, you now perhaps have discovered that, well, that wasn't my entire purpose in life. I'm not done yet. I want to rediscover uh, and recommit and reconfirm and find some other meaning in life. And this, in fact, is what these transitions can help us learn and do. So, again, all of this is about mindset and evolving our mindset so that we recognize that any transition has an ending and that, in fact, we can walk through it courageously. And in walking through it, let's remember to identify those roles that we had and what we're doing now and finding the gifts in the change and reassessing and perhaps releasing some assumptions that we had about ourselves, and that in fact we can step forward into a new light and reinvent ourselves in that process. And thinking about all of this is so very important, particularly as a leader and what you're doing to, live your life and make it fabulous. So listen, what pivotal transitions today perhaps um, are you thinking about now based upon our conversation? Any insights that you gleaned if you're live here or on the replay? I'd love for you to put that in the comments and think about subscribing to this channel as well. I want you to think about change, transitions, what you can learn from those transitions as you evolve and think about your mindset and how you're reinventing your impact. And I'd like to leave you with identifying one outdated assumption that you might have that perhaps it's time to release because it limits you. Perhaps again, you're that empty nester, or perhaps you've faced a health challenge that you never thought you'd get through, but here you are today, strong, resilient, and perhaps you're willing to talk about and help others through a similar kind of health challenge because of what you've learned and what you've done. All of this is about, hey, how in fact we can reshift our mind to think about these transitions not as blocks, but really as springboards to further growth. So that's the lesson for today. I hope you have a fantastic, fantastic day. And remember, be the leader only you can be. See you next time. See you tomorrow, in fact.